Alright, well now, y'all, I think we are in for a special treat with possibly the most Midwestern NBA Finals I could imagine. Apparently, this is the closest NBA Finals ever as far as where the two cities are in relation to one another. And as I'm recording this, by the time I get this out, should only be about an hour until the start of Game 1, but don't fret, because everything I say here should be relevant to the entire series, and I'm pretty much foreseeing anything except for the only thing that would really surprise me is if Indiana won the first two matchups, especially in OKC. But the point of this video is I am pretty high on Indiana. I'd say probably higher than most people, and I feel really good about Indiana, and I have since the start of the playoffs. I knew for certain they would beat the Bucks, and I mean everyone picked them because of the Dame injury, but even if Dame had been fully healthy, the Pacers had beat the Bucks before, and they had made a conference finals last year, so I felt like they could make a conference finals again. I did not expect them to go all the way to the finals, but it should be pretty exciting to have them here. And so I wanted to evaluate exactly what I thought their chances are, which is they have a chance. Not a great chance, but a chance, a real one. And I wanted to give them at least that credit. Of course, OKC is a beast, and I wouldn't be surprised if OKC wins this in a gentleman's sweep, but I'm hoping that the Pacers can make this decently competitive, and they have at least a few advantages wherein they can make it competitive, I believe. So, of course, a stat to keep in mind is that OKC is 25 and 0, and that's combined regular season and playoffs when holding opponents under 100 points, which just kind of makes sense because if you can't score 100 points on OKC, well, they're definitely playing well enough to score at least 100 points on you. So I think, it's very hard to stop this OKC team from scoring. I expect that SGA, Chet, and J-Dub will combined probably every single game put up at least 60 points, and you've just got to expect that. So if you're only going to put up like 101 points, no guarantee you're going to win a game. So I think Indy needs to score bare minimum 100 plus every game, probably close to 115 points a game if Indiana wants to win this series. Of course, they're not going to be able to do that every game, but they're going to need their all from all their scorers to pull this one out. Of course, what you got to remember with Daignault is he goes super deep into his lineup, and things have tightened up a little bit recently. Like, we kind of know who the major contributors are. Like, Isaiah Joe is not getting a ton of minutes just because he can shoot. And Carlisle is also going super deep, although he's down a couple of guys. Tony Bradley is hurt and probably won't play tonight, and then we shouldn't see Jarris Walker either, which is not a big loss, and those are the only two players that we shouldn't see in the series, except for Isaiah Jackson, who's been out all year, of course. So not a big loss, but still, that's two fewer bodies for Carlisle to use, and if they do any sort of hack-a-chet or anything, maybe that comes into play. But for the most part, these are very complete, full rosters. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the big man matchups then. All right, so the bigs. I'm very excited to have another Twin Towers matchup, one against the other. I mean, I'm glad that things really worked out in Indiana to where, at first when they brought in Siakam, it was unclear if Miles Turner would still fit. Thought maybe then they might finally trade Miles Turner, but Miles Turner been a super consistent piece for Indiana for his entire nearly 10-year-long career he's been there now, and really great for him to have him here, and glad that he's really found that great chemistry alongside of Siakam. So of course they're going to be starting together, so of course you're going to see Chet as well as Isaiah Hartenstein starting together, and I expect all four of those guys should be playing upwards of 30 minutes a game at least. And yeah, this should be a really fun matchup. Very physical. Of course, they're all very skilled bigs. Chet and Ihart, I feel like maybe have just the slight edge defensively. Miles Turner is very good as a shot blocker. A few seasons ago, in the playoffs, he averaged 4 blocks a game, but he's also blocking a ton of shots in this year's playoffs. Overall, though, I would still probably give the defensive edge to OKC because Hartenstein is just so damn physical and Chet's such a good shot blocker. The two of them together, they really lock down the paint. That being said, I still expect Pascal Siakam to get his own. He's done a really great job scoring the ball lately. I think in his last 5 games, 3 of those games he scored 30 plus points. So I'm hoping that Siakam will continue to find a way to put up his points. And of course, he's just a super maneuverable, super flexible big who has all sorts of tricks up his sleeve. And he's been shooting really well lately also. Yeah, Miles Turner and Siakam are averaging about 11 rebounds combined. So OKC's rebounding is much better. In the regular season, Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren average a combined 18 rebounds a game. And they're down a little bit in the playoffs, but not by much, 16 rebounds a game. So rebounding, I think, heavily favors OKC, and OKC also has a lot of wings and big guards that can rebound really well. SGA is a good rebounder. Lou Dort's going to chase down boards. And, Indiana has some good hustle guys like Obi Toppin who can maybe pick up some more boards, but I'm not going to lie, I'm worried Indiana is going to get killed on the glass just because for most of the playoffs, you're looking at only like 6 rebounds from Siakam and only like 5 rebounds from Miles Turner, which is pretty awful for your starting center. So I'm a little concerned about that. One thing that's interesting is that Pascal Siakam has been averaging a lot of free throw attempts as of the last 5 games. I believe in one game he had 8 free throw attempts, and then in another he had 11 free throw attempts, which is great because you know that SGA is of course going to get a ton of free throw opportunities. So it would be great if Indiana can get some to match as well. Hopefully Halliburton can get to the line, but sometimes he doesn't get that whistle. But lately, Pascal Siakam has been getting to the stripe and making them at a pretty consistent rate. And Siakam, once again, is averaging 46% from 3 so far, which is amazing. Miles Turner is averaging 15 points, once again, only averaging 5 rebounds, 2.3 blocks, which is great, and averaging 40% from 3. So just excellent shooting from the pair of them, whereas Chet is only averaging about 33% from the 3-point range. So, yeah, I guess Indiana in general will have a much better spaced floor. OKC moves the ball so well that, a lot of variables there, but in general, the shooting is the big advantage that Indiana has here, and they've really got to lean into it. And you can see some of the numbers I put up here. Neesmith at 50%. And keep in mind, these are currently the playoff stats as they stand throughout the entire Western Conference, Eastern Conference. These are the playoff stats. Neesmith averaged for all those games 50% from 3. And then Nembhard not far behind at 48.3. Super impressive. And then Siakam, 46%. Indiana has 5 guys averaging more than 40% from 3 in these playoffs, which is stellar. And the only downside is Halliburton is only shooting 33% from 3, and he's taking a good amount of attempts. So that's unfortunate. I, of course, want Tyrese Halliburton to continue to be aggressive, and hopefully he starts hitting them at a higher rate because I don't want him to stop shooting just because he's not seeing a ton of them go in. And yeah, Tyrese Halliburton could struggle, in a few games like he often does. He really needs to be consistently aggressive because SGA has been one of the most consistent players in the playoffs, and I imagine he's probably going to get 30 plus every single game of this series. So Indiana, they need to get their scoring in bunches. Like I said, SGA is going to get his, and then Chet and J-Dub will have some games where they play really well as well. And playmaking is interesting. I would say in general, Indiana has the far better playmakers, but OKC has just such great team basketball and chemistry, and they just move the rock so damn well. All guys are passing, and it's not just one guy with a ton of assists, but they just have a very fluid offense that is still very hard to guard. But I think there is an advantage in having a true point guard like Tyrese Halliburton. I know people like to say that true point guards don't win championships, but so far they're looking really good with Tyrese Halliburton as the engine. I mean, averaging damn near 10 assists per game in the playoffs is crazy, with only 2 turnovers as well, so that's a 5-to-1 ratio. And I expect OKC's defenders to get a few more steals off of him than normal, because OKC just has so many good perimeter defenders, and they just are really good at picking your pocket and getting out in transition. That'll happen to even the best playmakers in Indiana, including Halliburton and McConnell. But that's the other thing too, is Indiana also has TJ McConnell, who is a great ace up their sleeve, has been a super consistent backup point guard and very key, especially in last year's playoffs. He's also been good in this year's playoffs. I think he was a little better in last year's playoffs, but still getting you four assists a game. And on the OKC side of things, J-Dub is averaging slightly more with 5 assists per game, but I do still think TJ McConnell's the better playmaker. So I would say that as far as floor generals go, Indiana has the two best ones. But SGA also really good at using his gravity to get assists for other guys. Shooting in this series will be interesting. I think both teams are going to shoot from three pretty consistently. OKC, I think it's just going to be the moment. I think there's going to be a lot of clutch guys, even if guys haven't been performing very consistently lately. I think you're going to see improved performance from OKC, especially in their home games. The home game crowd, the shooting spree, it can just catch like wildfire. Guys get the bug, and all of a sudden they've got the hot hand. Indiana, though, just much more consistent from three in general. And I think all the perimeter defense that OKC will throw at them will change that a little bit. But yeah, Siakam and Nesmith really need to keep up the excellent shooting. I mean, they've been shot at really well, especially in this New York series, but they got to keep it up if they want Indiana to have a real shot here. And so I have even more stats over here. Indiana, once again, Nesmith 50%, Nembhard 48%, Siakam 46%, Shepard 42%, Turner 40%. So those are your 5 guys who are averaging 40% or more. And then McConnell at 35%, still league average. That's good. Then you have a few guys who are shooting not quite as well. Halliburton at 33%, which is disappointing. Toppin only 28%, which I'm not surprised. He never really struck me as a guy who would become a great shooter, but you'd still maybe hope that he could shoot it a little better just because he brings such great energy and other things to the floor. And then Mathurin at only 28%, which is pretty awful and very disappointing because Benedict Mathurin is one of those guys who I expected to be a key piece for them off the bench in kind of a microwave role. As of so far in this year's playoffs, he has not shot the ball very well, and as such, his minutes have declined dramatically. And I'll be very curious to see what happens. If he puts in a good performance in the finals, maybe he'll solidify a longer, larger role with the team going forward. Or this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if they moved him and looked to get, maybe bring in another star player and then really shore themselves up as consistent championship contenders, because I do think Benedict Mathurin has good trade value. I still believe he could become an all-star caliber player. It just might not happen in Indiana, and he might not be ready yet. And then OKC shooters, very dramatically different. Only one guy averaging above 40%, and that is Alex Caruso, who they have definitely needed everything that he's brought. And then Isaiah Joe with 38% is also good, but Isaiah Joe, like I said, hasn't been playing a ton of minutes. And compared to some of the other guys that OKC plays, yes, he's a good shooter, but he's not as good at all the other things in the same way some of these other Swiss Army knives that OKC has are. And Chet at 33%, not terrible for a center, but laughable in comparison to how good Indiana's bigs shoot the ball. But of course, Chet may have the odd night where he hits like 6 or 7 3-pointers. It might happen in a home game, could happen tonight. J-Dub just 31%. Another guy, well, to be fair, about 32%. Another guy you'd like to see shooting it a bit more consistently. But yeah, then SGA just 30%. He also dropped off from last year's playoffs. Last year he shot 43% in the playoffs, which is really solid, and that was really big for them, and it really speaks to how good SGA is at other elements of the game, that he has been as good in these playoffs, having dropped off as a shooter that much compared to last year. Then you got Wallace at 32%, Wiggins at 32%, Dort at just 30%, which is disappointing because I was surprised to see that stat line. I thought he was shooting it better because in the Denver series, which is the series I watched the most, he looked really solid as a shooter. There were a lot of games in the Denver series where Dort looked like OKC's best shooter. So maybe we can see a little bit more of that in the finals, but mostly Dort will be out there for defensive purposes. Fortunately, he is really, really good on defense. So to talk a little bit about the perimeter defense, which is going to be another big factor that leans heavily in OKC's favor. So I kind of have a little breakdown here where I said Nembhard equals Dort. which I don't know if that'll be controversial one way or another. OKC fans are often really high on Dort, and Nimhard is also possibly one of the very best perimeter defenders in the league, up there with a guy like Herb Jones, and pretty tough to pick. I mean, I'd rather have Nimhard for the shooting, but defensively, I think they're pretty equivalent. And then after that, man, OKC's just got a lot of guys who are big, strong wings with active hands who will pick your pocket and get out in transition, and Indiana has far fewer of those guys. Obi Toppin is a great transition player for Indiana, but he doesn't get his own steals all so often. Still a solid defender, but so yeah, I had Nimhard equals Dort, but then I say by a large margin Caruso over Nesmith. And Nesmith is holding his own, but he's more 3 than D, and Caruso has been excellent from both 3-point range and on defense. And then I have Cason Wallace over Obi Toppin. Cason Wallace is averaging like a steal and a half per game, which is great. So I would put him above Obi Toppin. And then Siakam and J-Dub, I had a hard time saying who was better on defense. I lean towards J-Dub, but I don't want to underrate Siakam. I think Siakam's focusing more on offense in these playoffs, but I'd say they're fairly equivalent defenders. They both get more than a steal per game. And then SGA is a better defender SGA is a better defender than Halliburton by far. And in general, then you go down deeper into the lineups, and pretty much everyone on the OKC side of things is a better defender than Indiana. And yeah, well, I guess now we just got to take a look. So who is my pick? Okay, drumroll. Unfortunately, I do have to go OKC in 6. I think my brain is telling me most likely outcome. In my heart, I want to believe Pacers in 7. Pacers in 7 would be nice. Maybe even Pacers in 6 is feasible. But in general, I think you can feel pretty comfortable picking the Thunder to win their first chip here. But yeah, that's just my little preview video. And once again, hopefully I'll get this out in time for you to watch it before the game starts. Game 1, that is. But I think everything I said here should be relevant for the rest of the series. So thank you so much for watching, and should have some more videos out tomorrow. I want to put out a video, an overdue video, on the Pelicans situation in Zion and all that nastiness. But for now, yeah, thank you for watching.